Hey, good morning, everyone. Mr. Mize coming at you from my office. For those of you who did not stop by yesterday for our Zoom chat meeting, hello. You are officially in my home, and I am officially in my rainy weather dog walking gear. So, my apologies for the informality. What I want to do is just give you guys some helpful hints as you set off and doing your memory snapshot, which is your main assignment for this week. And the prompt is there. You can see that on Canvas. The rubric is there. You can see that on Canvas. But really, what I want you to be thinking of this assignment is basically a culmination of everything that we did prior to spring break. Prior to spring break, we were working on sensory details and sensory imagery. You guys were working on dialogue. We talked about character. This is a writing piece where we're basically bringing all those pieces, and some of your temptation will be to pull ideas from what you've already written, for those of you that did your assignments before the break. And that tendency to pull from what you've already done is perfectly fine. The only wrinkle is you still want this to be original work. This should be an evolution of whatever you've done in the past to this that you're submitting for this particular assignment. Some of you might want to go down a completely new road. But if you haven't had the opportunity yet, uh, you will see a ton of writing models in Canvas under the writing resources page. I'm trying to direct you guys there on your weekly calendar. There's 4 or 5 that are there, and I would encourage you to go look at those, as those are some pretty good examples. And I wrote one, so there you go, about my grandma. But for this recording, what I wanted to do is just walk you through some tips for writing a narrative that you'll be happy with. These tips won't really come in handy until you are done with your initial draft of this thing. Uh, so you want to get the initial draft out, get it out of your system, and then these tips we're about to look at will be helpful in kind of guiding you from there. So I'm just going to walk you through just some of them and hopefully find them helpful. So here we go. Um, these are just some areas that we're going to focus on, looking at your first line, getting your reader into the story. Cliches, what they are and why you want to try to avoid them in your memory snapshot. Dialogue is actually not something we're requiring you to include in your memory snapshot. It's not listed on the rubric, but it is a skill that we have practiced. So I would just recommend why not giving it a go, even if it's just some internal monologue. That's fine as well. And then lastly, I want to look at syntax and how well do you vary your sentence lengths, punctuation, how it's being used, all that good stuff. So let's launch into it. So first lines, what makes them strong? Uh, this is a face. I'm assuming if you don't know what he looks like, you at least are familiar with his books, which are many of them have been made into movies. Movies like It, for example. This is Stephen King. It, Tommyknockers, The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption. There's so many books that has his name on it. But he says this, and I totally know what he's talking about because I've had this experience hundreds of times. The scariest moment is always before you start, and that's the moment that you're in with your memory snapshot. And I like the fact that Stephen King has given us permission to just be like, I'm uncomfortable, because this can be uncomfortable, especially when you're writing about yourself. But as far as first lines are concerned, right, this is what readers do all the time. You read that first line, you determine, do I like it or do I not? But here are some strategies to help keep your reader interested. I've listed 5 for you of them for you here. You can tease your reader with plot. You can entice your reader with setting, entice your reader with setting and characterization. We'll look at examples of all these: dialogue, or even characterization by and what I call with WTF. If you need me to explain what that means, I'm not going to, but once you see the example, you'll see what I'm talking about. So here's a few of my favorite first lines from books. They murdered him. This is actually from a children's book um, called The Chocolate War. It's not a book I would recommend for a second grader, but it is considered young children's lit. But this is an example where the writer is teasing the reader, us, with plot. They murdered him. Wait, who, what, what's going on? Here's another one. This is one book that you'll be reading when you get to the 11th grade. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. This is using the strategy of enticing your reader with setting. Wait, why is it cold in April? Why are the clocks striking 13? Clocks have 12, go up to 12. What's going on? What's the world that we're being introduced to here? And of course, George Orwell is a master of doing this in his book 1984. Here's an example of how to entice your reader with setting and characterization. This is from a book some of you may have read in middle school called The Outsiders. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had only two things on my mind: Paul Newman and a ride home. So we get two things here: a sense of setting and a sense of the character. In this case, the character is the main character, Pony Boy. Here's an example of how to use dialogue to start it off if you wanted to. Again, it's not a requirement to use dialogue, but it's a good strategy, and we've been practicing it. Where's Papa going with that axe? Said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. I love this first line because it could be the first line of an axe murderer story, or maybe just it's Charlotte's Web. Oops, let me go back. Charlotte's Web, the children's book. So that first line can go in all sorts of different directions, and E.B. White does a good job of using dialogue to kind of set us up. And I love the expression on Wilbur's face here on the book cover. It says a lot. And then lastly, this is from a book that's actually in our library. We went to the moon to have fun, but the moon turned out to completely suck. WTF, how can you go to the moon and have it not be a good time? But apparently in this world, that is what's happening. It's a book called Feed. And here M.T. Anderson is enticing us in his first line with a wait, what the heck is going on, as well as characterization. Who is this character and why do they feel like going to the moon sucks? So those are some examples of these different strategies. And I will say this about first lines, you guys, is your best first lines usually don't pop out of you right away. Sometimes you'll discover in your writing that the last line of your story might actually work better as a first line. First lines often aren't discovered until you at least get that initial draft out. And whatever that first sentence is going to be, it probably shouldn't be your first line because it's rough stuff. But that is one of the ways you can find a first line, is just to get all of the stuff out of your system first and then come back, and you might discover a good first line in there somewhere. Cliches, these are things we want to avoid as much as possible. As much as COVID-19, we need to socially distance ourselves from cliches. So what are they? They're a phrase or opinion that's overused and betrays a lack of original thought. They're very predictable or original thing or unoriginal thing or person. They make your writing seem boring. They make you seem boring. By using a cliche, you're telling your reader that you lack originality, making them want to literally yawn and stop reading whatever it is that you're writing. They make your writing interchangeable with anybody else's because people rely on them all the time. Make sure that your writing is specific to you and your writing task. They're vague. It's best to use the most precise wording. Specific details and explanations make better evidence than generalizations and trite phrases. And they just make you seem lazy. They're a hedge that you're building around yourself when you don't want to actually do the creative work. They make you also lose credibility for your reader. Your reader will not trust you if you can't come up with a better description than a cliche. And Martin Amis, a writer, he says this about cliches: good writing is a war against them. And we'll look at some examples. And the more you leave out, the more you highlight what you leave in. So sometimes not being too specific can actually be helpful to the story. It just depends. But if you guys go on over to clicheslist.net, they're all there. These essentially are expressions that we hear ourselves saying or read all too much. That it's raining cats and dogs outside. Oh man, life. This was a time of my life that really just felt like a roller coaster, or a box of chocolates. These are expressions we hear a lot that we try to stay away from because they make our, like we said, make our writing just look unoriginal. Dialogue, I'm going to go through this quickly. You don't have to use it, but you can. There's some options for verbs other than said. I think I included this in your lesson prior to spring break. Alternatives for using the word said if you're going to use dialogue. There's a whole host of them. These are just the A's through D's. This is an example I also included in your lesson on dialogue, just taking a look at how dialogue can significantly impact your narrative itself. Um, and I'll actually be putting this up on Canvas so you can look at the specifics too. Helpful hint: when incorporating dialogue, let the characters speak directly for themselves rather than report what the characters said to one another. You're using the same ideas as you would for showing, not telling. You don't need to say things like, "Hey, what's up? Not much here. How's it going? Oh, how you feeling? I'm good. How about you?" That dialogue is not only boring in real life, it's also boring when you write it. So try to stay away from that if you're going to use dialogue. And then syntax, this is simply our sentence lengths, types of sentences that we're using. This is a clever bit of writing by Gary Provost as he models different types of syntax, how to include different sentence lengths to make your writing more interesting. I'll read it. It says, "The sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, to harmony. I use short sentences and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important." So here's Gary Provost being very clever as he's using different sentence lengths to talk about sentence lengths and why they're important. Diction, just our word choice, refers to the choice of words in a particular situation. If you're writing about you as a very young person, you might want to include, you might want to consider changing your diction so it reflects you as a young person as opposed to you as a teenager. You guys can go through these on your own. These are just great examples of syntax and diction that I wanted to include for you. These will be in the PowerPoint that I'll post. But at the end of your memory snapshot, do you have a variety of sentence lengths? Is a sentence short? Is a sentence long? While it may seem like a rather insignificant characteristic, the length of a sentence and how it's paired with sentences of different or similar lengths can make a large impact on the meaning, emotion, or emphasis of a passage. So it's just a matter of changing it up, being aware of what type of sentences you're writing and do they need to change. How much sentence length variety are you including? Again, these are questions you want to look at after you at least have a draft of your memory snapshot. Do you feel there's enough in place or the story needs some to change the length of your sentences? You guys can read this on your own. Again, just a normal reminder just to use a word, your grammar check, because it's there. And so we should definitely use it. And what else do we have? Yeah, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to overburden you guys, but hopefully those are hints. Again, these will be helpful for you once you at least get an initial draft out. And if you want to pull from stuff that you've done in the past, that's fine. But I should see some form of evolution in this memory snapshot that you're doing. And don't pull your memory snapshot and copy and paste it from middle school. Sierra Vista students, you know who I'm talking to right now, or Jeffrey Trail. Originality, that's going to be a big thing for this. So I'm done for this segment, guys. Let me know if you have questions or if anything was confusing. I'll do my best to clarify. All right, talk to you soon.